Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order for Monday, June 4th, 2018. Clerk Worley, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Here.
Commissioner Sykes. Commissioner Urban.
Here.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Here.
Mayor Hopewell.
Present. May we have a motion to excuse Commissioner Sykes?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cunningham.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Anderson. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. For our opening ceremony this evening, we will have an invocation by Dan Sherman, Executive Director of Today. I ask that you stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lord, you give us historical documents in the Bible to learn about the great teaching that can be applied then and now. You sacrificed the life of Jesus, who experienced all the temptation of the world, the deceptive promises of the evil one, the punishment from prideful church leaders and powerful earthly governments, and still lived a perfect life. You taught us that the greatest love a person can share is to lay down their life for another. First, you always protected those who were being persecuted, then explained your teaching and told them to go and repent to a better life. Lord, may our hearts be humbled to seek your teaching and learn to live full lives with you. May the American dream always reflect the inspiration our forefathers received from you and have the willingness to give their lives for the freedom of all citizens in our country. May Kalamazoo leaders and citizens heed your teaching to protect the weak, knowing that you are their strength. May we all take the charge of giving ourselves to teach the freedom and full life you offer to everyone without discrimination. May we be as humble and loving as Jesus, who discriminates against no one and loves us all as your children. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are now on item 3B, introduction of guests. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have a presentation tonight from several individuals on Summer Learning Initiative. First, we have Meg Blankovich from KidNet, who will be introducing others and closing. We have Cindy Green from Kalamazoo Public Schools. We have Cherie Thomas from the Dub. Is she here? Okay, Cherie's not here. Andrea Vernola from Kalamazoo Public Library, and Adrian Vasquez from Hispanic American Council, Jessica Mancino from the Boys and Girls Club, and Chad Wendt from Parks and Recreation. Turn it over to you all.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mayor Hopewell, Commissioner, City Manager. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Meg Blankovich with the Kalamazoo Youth Development Network, and we are going to talk about stepping forward into summer learning. You have a purple folder that has a few documents in it. The first one that I'm going to just briefly walk you through is this beautifully colored document. It is our summer learning framework. Our theme for the summer is stepping forward into summer, and our tagline is own your summer. Our message to youth and families across the county and primarily in the city of Kalamazoo is to own your summer, that learning doesn't end when the bell ends the last day of school in June, and to step forward into summer learning through the arts, social justice, recreation, sports, social justice, many different topics. We work with 45 different organizations that serve 5,000 youth ages 5 to 18 during the summer and during the after-school hours. Our goals this summer are to improve quality. We use the summer learning program quality assessment. Our goals are also to improve the social emotional learning skills of young people. We use the DEVRO student strengths assessment. We have a strong focus on literacy, math, and science this summer. We're partnering with KPS. Cindy Green is going to talk about the summer reading book program. We are distributing the required reading books to all of our 45 cohort members, and Kalamazoo Public Library is providing training to each of our 45 cohort members, over 400 youth development professionals in how to integrate literacy every day during the summer. We also are working with KRESA and their math and science coaches, and we have a math and science coach with us who is going to be providing training and technical assistance to all of our youth development professionals this summer to integrate math and science every day. We also are working with families so that they can support their young people with literacy every day and math and science at home. For the first time in Kalamazoo, we are able to offer dinner through the Meet Up and Eat Up program through a collective approach on the east side, north side, and south side of Kalamazoo. It is the first time in the history of our summer programming that we've been able to offer dinner through that federal program. On the south side of Kalamazoo, as Adrian's going to talk about, 200 to 300 young people are going to eat breakfast and lunch at El Concilio, and for dinner walk across the street to the Boys and Girls Club at Lake Street and have dinner. On the north side, they'll have breakfast and lunch at Lacrone Park and New Genesis, and then go to Douglas Community Association for dinner. So we call it the power of we, the collective. We're able to do these things now and bust barriers that existed before to high quality summer learning. We're also going to be able to offer the mobile health and dental clinic this summer. We're partnering with the county health, with the Family Health Center, and so that mobile unit will be available in those 3 neighborhoods, and that's the first time we've been able to do that this summer too. So we're taking a very deep intentional dive this summer. This has been our 3rd year of working with the National Summer Learning Association to be able to be very intentional about our support and offer high quality summer learning opportunities for youth. So I'm going to turn it over to Cindy Green. Quickly before I do, you also have planners in your folder. Every youth on the east side, north side, and south side of Kalamazoo has these planners, so young people and their families can plan their summer. It lists all the cohort members, when they program, what they program, the meals that are served. So that's something new this summer too, that each youth has the opportunity to have a solid summer learning plan. Thank you.
Kalamazoo Public Schools, where your present meets your promise. Thank you for the opportunity to share with the community what is being done in KPS. We appreciate the City of Kalamazoo, KidNet, and other agencies helping our children. We know how important reading is, and we know that it is a challenge to get children to read in the summer. Researcher Dr. Richard Allington notes that the greatest loss for student achievement is called the summer slide. This is the time period when students are off in June and do not return until the day after Labor Day. KPS has a number of summer reading initiatives going on, and we greatly appreciate all the efforts here. First, there is a strong emphasis for every student to get a library card through the Kalamazoo Public Library and join KPL in the summer reading program. With 5 locations in the area, there are plenty of books to read, and KPS and KPL are partnering to give away books to children who sign up and register for the summer reading program. So far, we've been at Peace Pizzazz on May 19th. Thank you, Mayor Hopewell, for joining us there. And then on Super Saturday, we were at the library and encouraging families and children to register there. And we continue future efforts with the community to do so. Next, KPS generates a recommended reading list for each grade level. This list contains fiction and nonfiction choices for students in rising kindergarten through 12th grade. Books are selected based on a variety of authors, culturally relevant, and have content that's based on the curriculum for each grade level. The lists are shared with parents, guardians, as well as community agencies so that reading is encouraged all summer long. Students in rising 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grades will receive 8 books this summer. The first book is an all-grade read given to students by their current teacher and discussed in the fall by their future teacher. Students select the other 7 books that they will be sent home to them through the help of Goodwill Industries. Students read the books and then they write a postcard with information about the book to their teachers, and then the teachers respond back. Everyone is needed to assist with reading. We need the entire community focused on reading with supports to our children. Please ask children when you see them this summer, what books are you reading? What can you tell me about the book? And please support the efforts to make Kalamazoo a completely literate urban community. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Kalamazoo Public Library serves youth in the out-of-school time sector through strong community partnerships. Collaborating with KidNet member organizations allows us to extend KPL's reach, bringing the library's staff, materials, and resources to even more youth. In 2018, we've made plans to bring summer reading program participation to, for example, all 7 Parks and Rec sites. We'll be visiting them 3 times so that students who are participating can keep track of their 20 minutes a day, and when they've reached 15 days, they earn a free book. At 30 days, they earn another free book. 45 days, another free book. So this gets a lot of kids to be able to have books in their home that they own, that belong to them. They don't have to return them. At 60 days, they earn a t-shirt or a book bag. So we're very excited about that. We're bringing them to, like I said, all 7 Parks and Rec sites and to all 3 of the Boys and Girls Club sites. We'll be going out there many times. Youth will earn their prizes from within their camp or program, and then they do not have to make a separate tip to the library, although we hope that they will. This will make it a lot easier for families to have their children participate. We also have plans for book discussions, story times, digital media lab times, and other fun activities planned both inside the library and outside of the library with KidNet member organizations. Our philosophy is basically whatever we can provide that shares library resources with the youth that the youth development professionals are serving, we will do that. Some of the specific things we're also doing, we purchase, if we didn't already have them, we purchase all of the Kalamazoo Public Library recommended materials. And we keep those lists available at all of our desks so that when patrons come in, we are ready to show them where those books are or offer a suggestion in case there's so many at each grade level, we might not have that exact book, but we will be able to talk about the other books on the list and make sure that they go home with something that's just right for them. We also will be doing training with KidNet cohort members to help them know how to bring literacy into every program that they're doing. We will also offer bags of books of some of those KPS recommended books so that those organizations can have them to check out. So maybe they'll come and get a whole bunch from a bunch of grades and then come back and get another set so that they're having more options throughout the summer. Yes, and then we're working on questions and activities to go with especially those all grade reads so that they are like Sydney said, they will be able to talk with their teacher before they go home and when they get back. And in the summer, we hope they'll be able to talk with their youth development professional. And that person will be able to ask them what they're reading and know a little bit about the book so that the student can talk to them about that. Thank you so much.
Hello. I am here just to give an example of one way the Boys and Girls Club has been able to strengthen our programs with the partnership. So we have started a reading readiness program. So every day, every single member of the Boys and Girls Club, which ranges from like 150 to 250 every day, will read for 20 minutes. So during the school year, they've been filling out their homework with those 20 minutes. Staff read to them. Kalamazoo Public Library is also coming in to help us, our youth development professionals, learn how to read to kids because there's a way. And then that 20-minute reading each day will be followed by a summer learning loss program. So the younger kids focus on literacy, the older kids focus on STEM. We'll also have like teen book clubs, and we'll go to the library, to their hub, which is a whole digital digital art, 3D printing, so lots of opportunities that we've used this partnership.
Good evening.
Good evening. Chad with Parks and Rec. You guys are familiar with a lot of the things that we're currently doing. So to quickly do these, some examples of things that we're doing to promote literacy as well in our summer programs. Some of our camps are going to Read and Write Kalamazoo, which is better known as ROC. And they'll have the opportunity to write and, create their own book. We'll also be participating in the reading challenge. We'll be doing, as she said, frequent library visits, and we'll promote 30 minutes of reading every day at all of our programs. We'll also have a program with some teens where we'll be able to take them into some daycares, kindergartens, preschools around the city to read to the younger kids to kind of promote the fun for reading. Thank you.
Good evening.
Buenas noches. Good evening. Again, I'm also going to do an example of what this collaboration is going to do with El Concilio and other organizations in the community. El Concilio has been increasing its capacity to reach out to Latino families and youth. For the past years, we've been reaching out to more than 50 Latino youth in the community, where we create different fun opportunities from soccer to also reading and supporting with homework. In the summer, we encourage our families, our youth to read 20 minutes, and we're also encouraging our parents to participate in the reading. As the kids read in English, the parents learn how to read in English, and also the kids learn or get greater skills on reading. So we really focusing on making sure that our parents are involved in the reading in Spanish for their kids and English to the parents. So this is basically a win-win. We continue to partner with all these great organizations, just as we're proud to say that last year we partnered with Kalamazoo Parks and Rec to bring 35 kids, Latino kids, children to a summer camp. And that was the first year, and we're happy to say that we are proud to be partnered again this year and to have bilingual staff where our parents feel comfortable to bring their kids and know their kids will be in a safe and a good environment, and they're also going to be increasing the ability or the development with reading. So thank you so much.
So thank you. That concludes our presentation. Were there any questions from the commission?
Commissioner Cooney.
This is wonderful. This is really great. Thank you for doing all this. It's terrific, and it's so great how you're working together and playing off each other and combining it with so many different things like the health and the food. So one of the questions I had was, okay, so you're getting kids to read every day. What do you do for the kids who have trouble reading, that they're sitting there with the book, but they're not so good at reading? Well, what's going to happen with them?
In Kalamazoo Public Schools, we give 3 different lists to children to select the books that they're going to read in the summer. So one list is at grade level, one is a little below grade level, and one is above grade level, and the teacher can design where that goes. The list goes so that we know children are choosing books that are at their reading level. There's lots of activities you can do. Parents can read. You can read one sentence. The child reads one sentence. The parent or the people that are working with the children can model and have children repeat. There's a lot of different strategies that can be used to help children who struggle, but mainly to encourage them to keep reading.
Okay, that's great. So some of the people that are working with the kids in the program, they will help them in what they're doing.
And for us, the beauty of the partnership is that our youth development professionals are trained in these strategies. By partnering with KPL, Read and Write Kalamazoo, folks who are literacy experts, our 400 youth development professionals receive training. We have 2 weeks of training before summer kicks off, and literacy support is one of those training modules that our youth development professionals will receive. And then there's ongoing coaching all summer from the library for our staff.
So I really think this is a national model. And I bet you there's not many communities around the country that are doing what you folks are doing. It's great for our kids. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yeah, I really appreciate the focus on reading. I'm reminded that throughout the course of history, the inability to read has been used to limit the possibilities for a lot of young people and just communities in general. I'm reminded of the way that Underground Railroad and rebellions were stamped down by making it illegal to read, and the fact that voting was not available to a lot of people because it was illegal for them to read for so long. So I really appreciate that. I understand that that goes a long way in moving us forward. But I do have some questions about, and I'm wondering if somebody, maybe you, Meg, can give us maybe just a few specific details around, particularly around, I'm interested in this personal responsibility that looks like it falls under the social emotional learning. And then also interested in, I'm looking at the cover of these, which are awesome, by the way. I'm looking specifically at things like leadership, social justice, cultural identity, and I'm wondering if you can just share with me how those things fold in as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
One of the things we didn't talk about, because there is so much going on with the truth, racial healing, and transformation work, Kalamazoo Public Library, the National Library, the American Library Association wrote a grant to the Kellogg Foundation and has their own TRHT going on, and Andrea with KPL submitted a grant, so we're going to have teen reading clubs with 3 books that Andrea can give you the details on. So in terms of the social justice, the cultural identity, self-identity, personal responsibility, we're going to have those book clubs going on with middle and high school kids in the out-of-school time. And there's going to be a racial healing circle that the practitioners from TRHT will be facilitating. So that's all part of what's going on. Again, we have so much going on this summer. We could be up here for 2 hours talking about everything we're doing. And so the personal responsibility is one of the 8 social emotional learning skills. And we looked at our data across the past couple of years and where that really comes into play, and that's where you see the different skills across the age groups.
I appreciate that. So I'll just say thank you, thank you, thank you. I think this is outstanding. I agree with Commissioner Cooney. This is a model to be lifted up, and my hope is that with the focus on reading, that's just step 1, right? That's just gotten us on one step, and that what we're really looking at is long-term empowerment for students not only to learn from us, but for us to learn from them and allow them to be the leaders in their own lives. And it looks like from the head nods, we're all really committed to that. So I'm excited to continue to watch this unfold. It's a great process for our young people. So thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Urban? Microphone.
To make this into a question, but I really want to just applaud what you're doing here, and I'm thrilled about it, because I was a victim of the summer slide. I was very scared about going back to school, eager to do it, but in the summertime, no structure. I'm curious though, what do you plan to do to individualize your work? Because there's a wide range of needs and skills and abilities and disabilities. How do you plan to address the disparity in ability and willingness and all those things, so that the people who are struggling really feel challenged but not overwhelmed? I mean, that's so hard, and I just want to hear you talk about that, all of you, if you can.
So one thing we do at the Boys and Girls Club is this summer we're going to have projectors, and we're going to have electronic versions of the books, and so that our staff read to the kids, and it's more about the story and falling in love with the story, whether that's turning into role plays after, so that there isn't someone singled out. But if someone stands up and wants to be a leader and wants to go into our kindergarten and first grade group, then they can go read to them, and they can read a book that's more maybe more on their level. And then we kind of do that all over the club. And that promotes other things like leadership and personal responsibility. And so that's one way we're doing it. It is a first step for us in integrating a 20-minute reading. So, yeah, and then we also have high-yield activities is what we call them. So when you're playing basketball, how can you also integrate literacy? How can you also integrate the geography or self-awareness or social awareness and learn about other cultures through basketball? So our staff are taught how to do that.
Okay. Good. Anyone else want to talk about that?
I was going to say, for the schools, we're actually having 2 schools, Washington Writers Academy and Woodward School for Technology and Research. In order to avoid the summer slide, our students in those 2 schools will be starting school July 23rd, and they will still go 180 school days, but they'll have shorter breaks. So for instance, almost all school children are going to have 81 days of a summer break between the last day of school and the first day of school. They'll have a 38-day break, but then they'll take shorter breaks throughout the school year. We're hoping that just a 2-week break will lessen the gap that happens than 81 days in the summer.
Wow, that's a big step. Thank you.
It's the pilot that we're going to try, and we do believe it'll make a difference for our children.
May I ask a follow-up question? Clearly, if you're doing a pilot, you need to have data for before and after. You're going to be getting that and showing that?
We have lots of data, and yes, we're excited to be able to focus the data on specific areas.
Yes.
So we've been using, instead of using the state assessments that they keep changing and they're not as reliable, we use a national assessment called NWEA MAP. And this is the 4th year that we've used that data. So we've got some good baseline data, and we're hoping that this will make a significant difference. And other families are welcome to join us to go to those schools. They're magnet schools, and if you live within Kalamazoo Public Schools, transportation will be provided to those 2 schools.
Great. Well, I'm excited about that for sure.
Commissioner Sykes?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just have one more question that I forgot, but Commissioner Urban reminded me of. How about the kids who are already reading really well for their grade level, but maybe are struggling with some other things? I'd love to hear, sort of what their program looks like. And then also, really important question for me personally, sticks really close to home for me, is what are we doing? Is there, not saying that this is our responsibility over the summer, but wanting to know what sort of interventions are available and what's the process when we come across youth in this program who are dealing with mental health issues and not being served properly or according to counselors' suggestions. Do we have a process to sort of support them?
I'll tackle that one first, and then I'll leave the literacy and reading. So one of our capacity issues is we would love to have like floating therapists that could float within the out-of-school time and the summer across the cohort. And so that is like on our wish list to be able to do that. I lovingly called Jessica Mancino, one of our little terriers. She's always nipping at my heels. We need this, we need this. And that's been on the wish list for the out-of-school time community. And we're trying to build the capacity to be able to offer that.
Thank you.
I can say with our tutor program, Aztec Academy, we have not just kids learn how to read or help to get that support, but our tutors are bilingual and also are from Western and from K College. So what they get, the support based on what area, like if it's math or science. So they are capable to help them and guide them. And I think one thing that has worked very well with that partnership, that our students, now can see that they can be the next college students that will come back and help us, the future generations. As we see that, a lot of our Latino youth are not taking advantage of the promise, this encourages them to say, oh, I can be the next, Mr. Jonathan, I can be the next Mr. Cesar, who's helping, who's coming back and helping the community. So yes, our tutors are able to help with that, and with the mental, kids who have gone through trauma, we work very close with Family and Children's Services, who have a Spanish therapist who is able to help us in case that we need somebody who needs it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Hi, yes. So from someone who hadn't been as involved in the youth development world until I got to know kidnap members a few years ago when I started in teen at the library, I think the value of the collective is that you have a whole bunch of passionate, highly trained, networked individuals who know about literacy, who are learning about trauma-informed care, social-emotional learning, who are learning about what the needs are, and we're building relationships with the youth in our city and with each other, so that when you're in relationship with someone, you can see what the need is, and you can say, how can I meet this need? How can I help you with this? Instead of just imposing some kind of fix-all from above. And I think that that is really helpful to be on this, have this mutuality with the youth that we're serving. And then that kind of brings me back to your other question about what we do with high-level readers. And also with lower-level readers. Like, an exciting thing about the summer is that you can read what you need to read to grow, and you can also read the stuff that you love and you're excited about, and that's motivational for all levels of reading. So we love to support that in the schools and in the public library, that it's a time to read. You know, a lot of graphic novels are really good to read to improve your literacy. Reading to a child also improves your literacy. So there's lots of things we can do there. And then the other thing that I think of is, if someone is a very competent reader, then we want them to become content creators, you know. That's kind of the next step that I see, like, become a writer, write a comic, write a speech, do whatever it is that you're excited about, and share your voice with the world. So I think that a lot of our programming really supports that, and so I think that's kind of the next step. And that's true of even students who aren't as skilled in reading. That can be another motivational thing for them, you know, maybe write something instead. Writing, reading, it all works together for literacy. Thanks.
I'm really proud of it. So in the Boys and Girls Club, we have disintegrated our traditional suspension policy, and we went from 2 years ago to 74 suspensions all the way down to like 3 a month. And we have meditation rooms, so it's a choice. Kids use those meditation rooms that are just, we have sound boxes and aromatherapy, and they use that as a choice, and we ask them, would you like to use it? It's never something we put them in. So they use that to de-escalate themselves, so that they're learning how to cope in a place where they may have been triggered by even someone's smell. So we've started there. We also do a lot of like educational type activities with them. We offer them to be a leader when they're having behavior issues, rather than them, what are you doing wrong? It's like, would you like to go help with the other age group? And so those are the kind of things we've started, and it's working really well, and we're really proud of it. So.
Music to my ears. Really, really outstanding stuff, and I think it gets a little bit deeper into things that I particularly tend to be concerned with in our community around things like trauma and stuff like that. So I, you know, could not have imagined a better response, and I'm so grateful for that work. And I also just want to note, I was on my phone, I was not texting, I'm taking notes. So thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Other questions, commissioners? I have one. You know, we always talk about measurement, and so this is partly to Ms. Green, or Dr. Green, connecting to how these children did in school and us understanding that they're doing well. It seems to always be an issue of getting information about, have we had impact? So I understand and know that we will do an evaluation at the end and see where kids were compared to where they are when the program ends. But the point is, we want this to affect their academics, and that's where we start losing the ball in regards to a community trying to help our schools, but we can't seem to get information from our schools to help our schools. So how are we going to deal with that? Or have we dealt with it? Maybe you have.
One of the issues is attendance, and we know that attendance in programs does make a difference. So even when we're measuring our summer school program, if students aren't present in the program when you're doing the intervention or you're doing the service, it makes it very complex and challenging. Other than that, the NWEA scores that we work with, whether or not I don't know, we haven't talked about whether or not if they attended a program, whether that is the only variable that makes a difference for things, but we certainly are working within the schools during the school year for how well students are doing.
So one of the things I would certainly suggest, especially to our staff here at the city, but maybe it's a suggestion to all, we know there's restrictions in regards to getting information about students, but I think there is an authority that allows you to get information, that's a parent. And so if we start working with young people and working with the family, and maybe you're doing this, so don't correct me if I'm wrong, to get that permission so that we can follow this child through school. If we don't have that opportunity, I have no idea of what else I should be doing. If we have a relationship in Parks and Recreation with little Bobby, and we've been working with him all summer, and then he goes off to school, but we see him in the community, hopefully, hey Bobby, how you doing? I'm good. You know, I'm fine. How's your grades? Good. And I always ask a kid, what does that mean? And they always look at me like, oh, because, so we need to, if we're calling on a community to dive in, and again, I don't want information, we shouldn't have every piece of information about a child in school. But we have to work with parents in some way or another to understand that if we're all going to be wrapping our arms around, we need to wrap our arms around with the same information and the most important information to help that young person succeed. So I don't know how we do that in our programs. All of you folks, you get to do what you want, I guess. But I think we need to be thinking about exactly that as we do our work with youth and shared prosperity. So, any other questions, Commissioner? Thank you all for all that you're doing, all the work. It's going to be a fun summer, and we want it to be a successful summer. So good luck to all of you, and we're encouraging you. Thank you. We have one proclamation this evening, Commissioners. I believe the Vice Mayor will be reading this proclamation, and I will head to the podium.
While the Mayor's heading to the podium, may I have Jay, Brooke, and Mike join him to receive the proclamation? I'll read it, Jay.
Great, thanks. Well, he gestured, and I thought, this is not what we normally do.
Bringing you to the microphone. We know you will use it.
Ready? All right. This is a proclamation for LGBT Pride Month, June 2018. Whereas Outfront Kalamazoo has served the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, or LGBT community of Southwest Michigan for the past 30 years. And whereas during that time, the LGBT community has grown in the face of adversity to become a more safe, welcome, and viable part of the I don't want to read this, and Jay knows why, of Kalamazoo. Whereas citizens of Kalamazoo have actively supported their LGBT neighbors through overwhelmingly passage of the City Ordinance 1856 at the ballot box in 2009, and in doing so approved a non-discrimination ordinance amending the city code to protect people from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, housing, employment, and public accommodations across the city of Kalamazoo. And whereas the city of Kalamazoo has proudly boasted its own Pride Festival since 2008 and can lay claim to being one of the largest Pride festivals in the state of Michigan. And whereas the city of Kalamazoo acknowledges that full equality for the LGBT community has yet to be realized and continues to strive towards that end of LGBT homelessness in Kalamazoo, the end of LGBT teen suicide and bullying in our society, and to the end of isolated and harassed LGBT elders in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And whereas Outfront Kalamazoo continues to provide LGBT and ally community members in need to access the resources necessary to assist all people of our community to be happy, healthy, and productive members of our society. And whereas the City of Kalamazoo and Outfront Kalamazoo celebrate the diversity of all sexual orientations and gender identities, embrace the city's values of belonging, economic opportunity and stability, equity, safety, and security, a sense of community, shared leadership, striking a balance, and promoting a community where everyone can love who they are. Now, therefore, on behalf of the 52nd City Commission I, Vice Mayor Aaron Knott, and Mayor Bobby J. Hopewell, do hereby proclaim June 2018 as LGBT Pride Month in the city of Kalamazoo and encourage all citizens to join me in recognizing and supporting Out Front and Kalamazoo Pride for strengthening our community. I
want to thank Mayor Bobby Hopewell, Vice Mayor Aaron Knott, and the City Commission of Kalamazoo. I think on this day, such a proclamation might be a little bit more important than it was last week. To have the LGBT community here in Kalamazoo here without a shadow of a doubt that this city recognizes Pride Month, but recognizes them in their identities and in their living their authentic selves means life and death to many of those community members. So I want to say thank you from the staff at Outfront Kalamazoo, but also from the LGBT community. It means more than I think the community has opportunity to say when we are seen and recognized and when we are given space to be ourselves. So thank you.
Did you forget something? You have an invite for this weekend?
Oh, yes, thank you. On behalf of Mayor Bobby Hopewell, there is an invitation to the entire city of Kalamazoo to join us at Arcadia Creek Festival site for Kalamazoo Pride on starting at 5 p.m., nope, 6 p.m. on June 8th and starting again at 2 p.m. on June 9th. Thank you.
Wait, Jay, are we taking a photo?
Are you doing a photo? Oh, okay. We are now at item C, adoption of the formal agenda. Are there any changes, Commissioners? Commissioner Anderson?
Mayor, I'd like to move item F18 to the regular agenda, please.
Any other changes, Commissioners? Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on items under F, that would be our consent agenda, that item will need to be moved to our regular agenda. If you have such an item, please indicate at this time. Hearing none, Communications Manager Ritzma.
None, Your Honor.
And the consent agenda, please.
The following items, 1 through 17, are presented for approval. Approval of a one-year contract extension with GHT for environmental consulting services at Court Street Landfill in the amount of $121,035. Next, the approval of a 3-year contract with Natural Landscapes for the mowing of parks and green spaces in the amount of $293,154.15. Next, the approval of a contract extension with TreeWorks Incorporated in the amount of $169,050 for neighborhood tree maintenance. Next, the approval of a professional services contract with OHM Advisors for the Super High Pressure District Elevated Storage Project in the amount of $365,000. Next is the approval of purchase of 3 International HV 613 SBA truck chassis from West Michigan International in the amount of $374,068.44. Next is the approval of a purchase order with Northern Construction for the Betsy Place Reconstruction Project in the amount of $656,149.50. Next is the approval of a contract with James E. Fulton and Sons for Rockwell Park improvements in the amount of $363,000. Next is the adoption of a resolution indicating the city has met the requirements to receive Federal Transportation Alternative Program funding to install sidewalk on Howard Street from West Michigan Avenue to Stadium Drive, and authorizing the city manager to sign all related documents. Next is the adoption of a resolution affirming the 2018 assessment roll. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving a request from the Downtown Development Authority to levy a tax rate of 1.9638 mils. Next is the adoption of a resolution creating the Park, Cedar, Burdick, Lovell area neighborhood enterprise zone in the Vine neighborhood. Next is the approval of a resolution setting a public hearing for June 18, 2018 to adopt the 2018 action plan as required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Next is the approval of a request from the Kalamazoo Country Club for a permit to publicly display fireworks at 1609 Whites Road on Wednesday, July 4, 2018, with a rain date of Thursday, July 5th. Next, the approval of a special permit for a miniature pig to be kept at 3717 Madison Street, subject to compliance with applicable statutes, ordinances, and health codes. Next is the appointment of Patsy Moore to the Kalamazoo Building Authority and Kalamazoo Hospital Finance Authority to fill a vacancy. Next is the approval of the mayor's appointment of Ciara Larson to the Historic Preservation Commission for a term expiring on March 31, 2021. Next is the approval of the minutes from the City Commission meetings on May 21, 2018.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve items 1 through 17 and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Sykes.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Kooning. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cooney,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott,
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. G1, Mr. Manager. Or what is now G1?
Yeah, we have approval of a brownfield plan redevelopment and purchase agreement regarding the sale of Lot 2 at 424 South Rose Street to 400 Rose LLC and Park at Cedar 2 LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Commissioner Anderson.
I understand that there may be some individuals who here would like to make a presentation related to this item. Is it okay to request that?
Certainly.
Yeah,
Anyone wanting to speak on this item, step to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes and give us your name and whether you live within the city.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. It's our pleasure to be here this evening. I'm Greg Dobson, Chief Operating Officer of AVB. With me is Rich McDonald, Chief Operating Officer of the Hinman Company. And we're excited to be here this evening to talk to you a little bit about a proposed project in the city of Kalamazoo. With us also here in the front row is Curtis Ardema, one of our colleagues who can also answer questions if we can't. So I'll just jump right into our presentation if that's okay. First of all, we present to you, are you seeing our displays in front of you? Okay, good. Oh, right here? Ah, good, good. This is a 1952 Sanborn map, and the parcels at the right side of the screen, the east side, are the parcels that the proposed project called 400 Rose is proposed to take place on. Just show it to you so you can see historically what is there. The Episcopal Church is there at the center of the screen at the top, running along Level Street. A couple of former buildings. First of all, West Cedar Apartments fronted on Cedar, and the Caroline Bartlett Crane House fronted on Rose Street on the east side. Those two buildings were demolished in 59 and 63, and the site looks a lot different today. This is what the site looks like from the air. Mostly a parking lot. It's the site of the former police station, which was demolished many years ago. To give you a little perspective of the site, this is a photograph looking east down Level towards the AT&T building. This is looking north towards downtown along Rose, with the site being on your left or to the west. This is looking north up Rose Street, with the site being on your left-hand side. We show you these to give you a feel for the neighborhood and how we're trying to integrate the design that we're going to show you with the surrounding buildings. See, we have commercial buildings to the north and more residential to the south. This is looking east down Cedar. So you can see our site there. Is that right, Rich? That was north. Sorry, north down Rose,
Yep,
thank
just
you.
backed up a
Yeah,
little bit.
something looked wrong there. All right, there. Now we're looking east down Cedar with the site on the left. And finally, one more right at the corner of Cedar and Rose looking east. And just point out to you a couple of the elevated entries to the residential units there, particularly on the right, but on the left and in the area. One last one looking back to the west with the site there on the right-hand side. Now on to our project. 400 Rose is a 135-unit apartment project that includes some retail and also 77 underground parking spaces. The parking spaces are underneath the building footprint that you're looking at here. A few interesting things from a site perspective, consistent with the downtown development review guidelines. We have pulled the building right up close to the street on all three sides. And you'll notice at the very northeast corner of this site, there's a large area of concrete with a dotted box and some dotted lines. That's a large AT&T vault that has been in that area for years and is kind of the main feeder for the city of Kalamazoo. So we have designed this project around that.
So your time has expired, but I think your colleague, I'm sure, will pick up from there. Oh, you're yielding? You can take the time, but not yielding time. So you folks figure out.
How do I back it up here? Okay, so a couple of other features on this. Along Rose and Level Street, we are planning to add on-street parking. We've worked in conjunction with the city to try to provide more on-street parking. Also, on Rose Street, there's actually an extra lane involved, so we're pulling that curb line out in order to create some landscaped, bumped out areas, and also accommodating a lane for a bike lane. The project is going to be LEED certified. This site plan assumes that we'll have some facilities on site, a bicycle storage garage to house all the bicycles. We've had several conversations with St. Luke's over the years as we've been working on this. A couple of things: we're going to maintain the sidewalk between our properties as a path of egress from the church. We've also talked to them about doing some initial testing and installing seismic monitors so that any construction that we might do, we're making sure that we're taking into consideration the historic building next door.
Bike lane, stormwater.
Bike lane. Also on this site, underneath the, kind of in the back area, we are retaining the 25-year storm. So this project involves a number of different collaborations, and one of those was an interest in trying to get development, especially in the urban environments, to retain more stormwater on site instead of going into the city storm system. All right.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. I
Sure.
just received some clarification. Stop the clock. This was supposed to be a staff presentation. It wasn't supposed to be on consent. It was supposed to be on regular and staff presenting. So continue your presentation until you're completed.
Okay.
That doesn't mean taking it out.
We're going to get Kurt up here next.
You wanna?
All right. So I think that's it, other than Rich was pointing on a key point that we wanted to mention. And this is a project that we've been working on for a long time. And there's been a significant amount of collaboration between ourselves, City of Kalamazoo staff, and a number of others. And when that happens, it makes the project harder for us. It's an arduous process. However, what I would like to say is the end result results in a better project, and the items that Rich just mentioned are many of the things that came from that process that made this project better than it was originally conceived.
And part of the collaboration is there's gives and takes through that whole process. And so, you know, we had a lot of those discussions, you know, even leading up until Friday. We were talking about parking. So we continue to talk about that, and we want this project to be something that we're all proud of, and really to be able to talk about it to others in the community, but also other communities about how we incorporated all these aspects that were really important to those that we engaged with.
One last thing on parking. We are providing approximately 1.3 parks per unit, which is more than is required by the ordinance. But we think it's a good mix of parking that we have and we're providing with this project.
Also, behind the building, you'll see some yellow-colored structures. Those are garages that will also have some green roofs and some live roofs, and we'll be retaining some of the water, stormwater from the roof of the building in order to irrigate the landscape and other areas within the site. Those are not LEED requirements, those are extra items that we've incorporated into the project.
So now onto the building itself. Now that we've shown you the site plan, this is the elevation of the building looking south and west from the corner of Lovell and Rose. A few things to point out about the building. Number one, we're anticipating two-way streets here, otherwise that car is going the wrong way, but hopefully that will happen in the near future. In addition, at the corner you'll see a lot of glass at the first floor. That is a retail area that we will have available for lease. The building materials, just to give you an idea, the kind of silver at the corner above the glass is a metal panel. We have a simulated wood panel, which is the brown vertical that you see there. Brick on the large bump outs are brick, and then there's also some cement board product on this elevation.
And then also with this site, as you see, that because of that AT&T vault, it really creates a great space for where we can have an outdoor seating area for what we envision will be some sort of cafe or something like that that will be available to those in the community and also the residents of the building. So it creates a really nice open space near that corner.
So moving on, just a different perspective. This is looking northwest from Rose and Cedar. Very similar to the other corner, but without the retail component. Again, as we talked, as you move your way south, we have more residential neighbors, so that we took the building to fully residential at this location. You would notice some of the units have balconies, some of them do not, so there's a mix. One of the really interesting things we think about this project is how we connected with the sidewalk. The downtown development review guidelines require a certain amount of opacity, ability to look into the first floor, as well as connecting with the street. We're doing that while also providing a certain level of privacy to residents by stepping up the first floor approximately 3 to 4 feet, depending on the area. The site moves a little bit. That is actually the underground parking garage extended under most of the building, raises that up. So we have cars underneath, we extend it up. You have a few steps to your patio area. With these units, you can actually, the first floor units, you can access them from the street level or from a center corridor hallway if you went in the main entry. And these wrap the entire building even on the west side into the parking lot.
And we spent some time with Rebecca Kick and her team looking at different examples where they've accommodated this entry feature in an urban context. And so we're really, we're happy with how this turned out. That was another one of the collaboration features. And you know, we were also trying to capture as this being a transitional property, kind of those stoops and those porches that you see just across the street as you go further down Rose and across the street on Cedar Street. So we wanted to make it feel like it was modern and urban, but yet also part of the adjacent neighborhood and being respectful of those artistic or architectural elements. The other thing that you don't see maybe in any of these views is that the roof, although the roof has an urban kind of the flat roof line, it also has a pitched roof and a shingled roof on 2/3. So it also, that feature also connects with the adjacency in the adjacent neighborhoods as well.
Last thing I'd mention on this slide is just as you look to the building to the north in the background, you can see the relevant height of the building ties in well with the buildings to the north and east. One feature of the project is an outdoor amenity space up on the 5th level. That's the only occupiable space on the 5th level in the building is this outdoor area facing the city's urban core to the northeast, right at the corner of Lovell and Rose. About 50% of this surface area will be green roof that doubles as landscaping and adds to the aesthetic of the area, but will actually be green roof and considered green roof for our lead points and criteria. And there you can see how the building will appear as a flat roof building from the ground level, but from certain perspectives up high enough, you'll see there is part of the building that has sloped roof as well. We have passed out actually this slide, just kind of noting some of the key bullet points. This project we do feel is consistent with the 2025 master plan. Of the 135 units, 14 of them are workforce housing units. There's a broad range of sizes of units. It's obviously a redevelopment of a brownfield project. We mentioned it was LEED.
We are planning to allow pets, although we're not quite sure yet about miniature pigs. Could leave that there.
Quick update on where we are. April, we received approval from the Downtown Development Review Guideline Committee. We received a use variance because this area was part of the area that might have been rezoned that hasn't been. So we needed a use variance for residential on the first floor. That was received in May. The site plan was submitted on May 11th. We had our last meeting with the city staff last Wednesday, and the site plan was approved with a few contingencies that we need to satisfy. And our goal is to get started this fall. Few final comments relative to, as we view this project relative to the 2025 master plan. Our goal is to attract more residents downtown. We think that's good for all the different initiatives that are happening. We have a mix of uses with the retail we mentioned at the corner along with the residential. The building is very compact and up on the street, so it gives an urban feel. It's very pedestrian oriented, being close out to the street and very much walkable. We have a large diversity of unit ranges, price points, and there's been a lot of community and stakeholder collaboration in this project. With that, we would welcome any questions that we might be able to answer.
Mr. Anderson.
First of all, thank you for coming and doing this work and presenting it to us and working with the city in terms of trying to meet the goals that we have been setting forth in IK25. I appreciate that very, very much. Something you didn't mention, I know it's required. You want to talk a little bit about accessibility or barrier-free units, that sort of thing, and how those are incorporated. Obviously, some units that are steps up, you know, that's a challenge there. So how does that work?
Sure. So there are a variety of requirements for barrier-free accessibility. The exact details of those we defer to our architects. However, in general, a few things. Number one, the building at the corner can be addressed or entered at grade. So at the corner there, we're entering in at grade, and same with 3 other areas at the building. Once you're in the building at grade, we have 2 elevators in this building, one at the north end and one at the south end. Beyond that, normally all of our first floor units are designed to be adaptable units, and then there is a certain percentage of the units that will be actually constructed barrier-free. Don't know the exact number of those, but it should be a very accessible project, whether you're coming from the parking structure, the parking lot, or the sidewalk.
And the underground parking, the elevators extend all the way to the underground parking as well.
Commissioner Irby.
Could you tell me the total number of apartments that will be in this structure?
135 total.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sykes?
Yeah, bear with me because I've got a number of questions for you. So feel free to make your answers as brief as necessary, especially so that I don't annoy my colleagues up here because I can be a little bit wordy and long-winded. So number one, I just want to start off by saying, you know, these pictures, this building is beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. You know, the kind of building, if I didn't have 4 kids, I would love to live in. You know, and I'm always excited about quality development happening in our downtown area and also surrounding that area. I do have some questions. I see here you talked about 135 units total. I see here there's 121 apartments. I'm assuming those are market rate rentals. Okay, and then we've got 14 workforce housing units. I do know one thing, and I appreciate the fact that you guys looked at our master plan to really gauge what the needs were of our community. I think that's really important. I know that the Imagine Kalamazoo process that went into that plan, we've got a lot of residents that are really concerned with affordable housing. And so one of the things that immediately comes up for me, especially in this location, is what does that do to the rental rates of other properties around there? You know, just given the fact that the market will fluctuate and change the way that it does. And so I'm hoping you can, number one, share thoughts on those two numbers, 121 versus 14. And then also, you know, yours says workforce, not affordable, and I understand it, like everybody has different definitions of what that means, right? Even affordable. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the income ranges, because I see you've got a diversity there. Yeah.
So a couple answers. First of all, in regards to the number, the 14 is 10% of the 135 rounded up to 14. So that was, that's how we got to that number.
Okay.
We think that, you know, as in general, as more units are added to the market, the more supply that's on the market, there is going to be an impact, you know, on the price. With more supply, price is going to go down, unless the demand also goes up. Now, I think that's yet to be seen exactly what is going to happen with that economic model. You know, we put together a model with the city to try to have a range of workforce housing as it related to these 14 units. The market rate units themselves span a broad range because they go from quite small to some corner units that are quite large. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of coming into this market. So of those workforce units, though, 5 of them are 2 bedrooms, 5 of them are 1 bedrooms, or is it the other way around?
We got 4 of the units will be 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
We have 5 bedrooms that will be at the range between 80 and 120% AMI. So 5 of the units will be at 80%, 5 will be at 100%, and 4 will be at 120.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did we answer all those?
You did. Thank you for that. And I totally, I get exactly what you're saying with more supply, prices go down. I think where my concern comes in is, you know, we absolutely do like to attract residents, and we have a good number of residents here who don't have affordable, safe housing. And so you know, for me, what I always want to balance with, you know, the markets is also understanding the wealth disparities. I wonder if, so for the retail unit down at the bottom, and I know those will be for lease, my guess is with a property as gorgeous as this, right, leases here won't be cheap. And so I wonder if there's any sort of thought around focus, maybe this is something that the city is thinking about with this, city staff, around culturally relevant businesses to the area. You know, you mentioned complementing the urban core and the Vine neighborhood and wanting to really honor the community, the culture of the community, and the look of the community, and I so appreciate that as somebody who lives in the Vine community. But I do wonder about both culturally relevant retail spaces and then also local small businesses, as we're working on developing local small businesses and entrepreneurship and things like that. If there's any attempt on your guys' part to sort of partner with us on that work to try to lift up some of those opportunities and spaces, particularly for those opportunities.
Well, I think we're definitely open. We don't have a named user for the retail space. You know, I think we've identified it as retail, but we've also, you know, the city just recently went through a retail study with a pretty reputable consultant. Yeah. And his, you know, in just my recollection of that, and Rebecca, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he was really focused on, you know, until we solve the retail in the main strip areas, you know, the community really won't be able to grow or enhance retail outside of those areas until it solves some really significant infrastructure challenges, and those being converting all the one-way streets to two-way streets. And so that was part of that report. So the idea of even expanding, you know, part of the reason that we had the ground floor residential to the quantities that we did on the ground floor was because there's going to be a focus on increasing the retail in other areas first, and that'll take years, maybe decades to accomplish.
Awesome. Thank you.
Maybe two other just brief comments. One is, I think we'd like to think of that retail area as being high-priced areas. The reality is it's a function of the market as well. So what those rates are going to be, they might not be as high as you might think. And then secondly, we've looked at, we own one property across the street, the old Knights of Columbus building, and we have talked with the city about other interesting uses for that building as well that might be complementary to the project or might meet other needs in the city. So
that's awesome. One other final question. So you talked a little bit, again, I'm bringing this up again, complementing the urban core in the Vine neighborhood. Is this, when you say that, are you referring to the visual aspect of the building? Is there anything else you refer to besides the visual, or?
I'm thinking of it both visually and aesthetically, how the size of the building and the form of the building relates to the adjacent uses. But also I think it's the use itself, that it's a transitional use in nature, that having it be residential or, you know, kind of gradually shifting from commercial at the corner to residential as you head south, it makes for a nice transition between, you know, what you have along Cedar, mostly residential with some interspersed retail. So I think of it in those two terms.
That's outstanding. That's all my questions. I hope you guys didn't feel like I was putting you on the hot seat. These questions are more for my purposes and conversations with my colleagues and the staff, and understanding that these things are not your guys' responsibility. And I should have probably started that way. Understanding this is not your responsibility, but it's a conversation that we're having, and so any information you guys provide helps us with our conversations. So I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time to answer all my questions. And again, it's beautiful. I look forward to seeing it. So thank you.
And we're very interested in remaining part of the conversation beyond this project as well.
Outstanding, outstanding. We will undoubtedly probably hold you to that. Thank you.
Other questions, commissioners? So I'm going to differ from the commissioner a little bit. I do believe it's your responsibility. So you know that. So it's not, this is no surprise to you.
Not the first time.
Yeah. Probably won't be the last either, especially as it relates to property that we as a city own, that we need to not just fulfill the wants and needs of our developers, but we have to make sure they're connected to our community and understanding what we need to move our city forward. And you've connected with our master plan, you've connected with our vision, you've been working with the staff. I'm impressed, so very impressed and proud to have you folks working on this prime piece of real estate in our downtown that, interesting enough, was all about serving our community for 30, 40 years with the Department of Public Safety headquarters building there, now being reutilized in a way that also will serve in a different aspect. So thank you for your work. Thanks, gentlemen. Commissioners.
Thank you. It was our pleasure to present it and to answer your questions both, so thank you.
Commissioners requested, anyone else wanting to speak on this item, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, commissioners, the requested actions, a motion to motion to hold this item until June 18th, 2018. 2018. Woo, time warp there. Just happened right in front of my face. Is there a motion, Commissioner Urban?
Yes, there is. I move this.
Moved by Commissioner Urban, supported by Vice Mayor Knott. Is there a discussion?
Yeah, I wanna go back to some of my questions, some of the answers, and just share, with you all. And I know we've had a variety of different conversations about some of these particular things. I appreciate all of the staff that have been talking to us and talking to developers for a very long time on this. I think this is a beautiful building. I understand that this is something we're going to be moving forward with. It also brings me great concern. These are the sorts of things that, when people are already afraid of gentrification, they start to see these things go up and it gets worse. And so I'm still feeling really strongly that I am not feeling as if we have a clear road ahead for us, for the city, and maybe you guys can help me with this, for how we are addressing the concern of displacement while attracting new residents. I get it, when I ran for this seat, that was a large part of the conversation. How do we attract new talent and new people? But every single time that I spoke with a constituent, every single voter that I spoke to, I made the commitment that my first priority are the residents already here. Because there's talent there, there's untapped talent there, there's untapped creativity and innovation here with our residents that we already have. And so I would hate to push and displace some of that innovation and creativity and talent in our efforts to attract. So I don't want to detract from the importance of attracting new residents. Forgive me for that sentence and the way I worded that. And maybe this is something as simple as another meeting for me with community planning and development, with City Manager Ritzma, with you, Jim, because I'm still not seeing it, and I still have constituents and citizens, residents, come to me and say, what's going on? We're hearing these things. Why do we feel like we're being pushed out? And we should never, I don't know where the feedback is coming from, we should never have that conversation happening. So I think I need a clearer understanding of the track that we're on, how we're addressing that, and also how these types of developments are a part of that strategy or not. Maybe they're completely separate. I think they should be a part of this strategy. So, for what it's worth, wealth disparities are such that more supply in the market does not necessarily lead to lower rates. What it leads to is a disparity in our quality of life.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. Well, I'm glad that Commissioner Sykes is expressing these concerns, because these concerns are going to stay around for this project and for any subsequent project of any size in the city. When we were talking about workforce housing here, we're talking about incomes that are 80% of AMI is close to $40,000 a year. 120% of AMI is like 60 or something $1,000 a year. Well, that's workforce housing for teachers and for policemen, maybe for electrical workers, some unionized construction workers can probably pull that much down if they can keep a job all year. But there's a lot of folk who do work who are making a lot less than $40,000 a year. So because this is a city-owned property, we could actually, the planning department could actually put on some requirements that they wouldn't have a chance of being able to apply to anything that's not city-owned. So this 10% figure that's used here is typical of what I'm aware of is done for set-asides for workforce housing. I think it's a good attempt to meet part of the need, but let's not think that it's meeting the whole need. We need other projects that are going to be for still lower income, that are safe and affordable. The problem with housing that is for incomes that are much lower than that, it's very hard to find an economic way for anybody to do that from the private sector. So then you have to look to the public sector, and we're not going to get much help from HUD. We know that from the federal government, and we can expect some maybe from MISTA, but little, because they're focused on workforce housing too, primarily. So that's a real challenge, to load this project up with trying to meet the whole range of affordable housing needs is tough. But let's not, in a way, approving this project increases the incentive for the rest of us to be creative about how we can make housing affordable in Kalamazoo without contorting ourselves into so many commitments that we have to make to other units of government. You know, something that we can actually deliver ourselves is a huge challenge. And by your phrasing this, bringing this issue up, it gives me a chance to try to talk about the whole range of the issue. This is something that David Anderson is probably the most qualified to talk about. But I just want to say that this is good for meeting part of the need, but the biggest and most urgent part of the need is still out there to be addressed in other projects. And how we're to do that is the challenge.
Just to piggyback on the same thing, just a little different approach. I had the honor of speaking with the mayor the other day in regards to the cost to put a home, affordable home, on a lot, and it's not cheap under any circumstance, especially when we speak to public versus private. And I think that's overall the conversation that needs to be had is how do we create this affordable housing. So my question would even be to the experts in the room, such as ABB. This isn't for you to answer right now, but please reach out to us as our government, individuals in the community that are concerned. How is it that we can find a way, so you've made this investment, and it's obviously on a larger scale. There are individuals out here who would like to do that on a smaller scale, whether they want to be landlords to a certain degree. But how can we meet that need with the land that we have? And this will not only empower individuals in our community who have lower capacity, but it would also give us opportunity to miss that gentrification word by empowering individuals in our community. So once again, ABB, I'm asking that you take a leadership role and maybe pointing us in the right direction, taking someone by the hand, even if need be. I know that we have our resources, but our resources only go so far. And I personally ask that you make that initiative, and if there's anything that I can do to assist with it, please let me know.
Any other commissioners that haven't had a chance? Commissioner Sykes.
Yeah, so yes and yes. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues. My concern is not that this doesn't address enough of the need, it's that I don't believe it really addresses the need of affordable housing. My assumption is that, you know, so if the lowest rate is $40,000 a year, that's likely for a one-bedroom. We got families with kids making less than that, right? And these units won't serve them. I want to, I want to lift up that I do appreciate the fact that, you know, affordable housing costs money and it's a big problem, and we're seeing this all over the country. Part of this for me, and I know I've brought this up with both my colleagues and the staff before, is part of this is because of disinvestment from white flight, right? We know from history that as desegregation happened, as people of color were allowed to move into historically all white neighborhoods with deeds that said you cannot rent to anybody who is not white, right? Something that we know has ended not that long ago in our city, and people moving and taking their investment and their tax dollars to other places. And that is something that the city of Kalamazoo wrestles with extremely. I mean, it's the reason why I was so disappointed that we were not able to continue a conversation about income tax, because I have felt very strongly since I got here, there are people who live outside of our city who need to be pitching in, right? Now, if we're not ready for that yet, as the city of Kalamazoo, that's fine. But, I think especially with these sorts of developments, I mean, these are not cheap developments, right? If you have the ability to get funding for a $25 million project, right, in our city, then my guess is, there are resources there that can be utilized so that this is more of a partnership than just, we've got this land, thank God we were able to sell it, right? And I know that's what we're getting at. So I do wonder, in addition to whatever sort of advice developers can give us and people in the market can give us, what is the responsibility of folks who have resources? And how are we together doing research, checking in with people? I mean, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting this isn't happening. I know it is. We've been talking about this for a long time, but the question for me keeps coming up, and I wish we were further along in understanding this. I hear you, this is really common across the country, and so is displacement and homelessness, and with displacement comes skyrocketing homelessness. I mean, let's pretend that these were 14 units that were like bottom market, bottom income level. That wouldn't even empty out the mission. You know what I'm saying? That wouldn't help us with our homelessness in Bronson Park. So I say this to say, again, I think this is a beautiful building. I do not say this to knock this project. I say this to, and I know we're all talking about this, I say this to impart my feeling of a sense of urgency to really have a concrete plan. And if we already have a concrete plan that I'm not aware of, I'd love to sit down and meet with folks who do have a concrete plan. Because as these great opportunities come up and we're still not ready, the concern gets higher and higher and higher and higher that we will quite possibly displace entire communities and neighborhood and change the cultural fabric of specifically low-income and communities of color, which to me would be just tragic, especially given the city that we're in and the values that we have. So I won't rail on. I know I'm sort of ranting at this point. I won't rail on any longer, but we have to get this, and with these types of developments happening, we have to get it like now. So thank you for giving me the space, and I won't take up much more tonight.
So this is such a huge topic, and there's so many different angles on it. Here we got this piece of land that's been sitting there for a long time. Now we got an opportunity to build something on that, and that's very attractive in a lot of ways. But at the same time, we know the problem we got with homelessness in the city, and I keep focusing on 1,000 kids in our public schools that don't have a place to live. This is going to do nothing for them. Not to say this is a bad project. Not at all. This might be the best thing that we can do with that land. But certainly we got to put on our agenda these other folks, and especially finding a way to deal with those kids that don't have a place to live. We hear this terrific program we have tonight for the summer, but if we got kids that don't have a place to live, it's going to be awful hard.
Any further? Clerk Borland, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, G2 or G1?
Adoption of an ordinance amending Section 13-1 of the City Code of Ordinances addressing nominating petitions for the offices of Mayor and City Commissioner.
Anyone wanting to speak on this item, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. For item G1 on the agenda, this is not citizens' comments yet. Hearing none, Commissioners' requested actions, a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion? Moved by Vice Mayor Knott.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Anderson. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, you have a report this evening?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Attorney, you have a report?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Clerk?
No, sir.
Thank you. We are now at citizens' comments on anything this evening. Please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Nehemiah Scudder. I live in the city, actually downtown the city, which is nice. What I'm here about tonight is to challenge an old commonly believed statement that says we need separation of church and state. I would like to see more involvement by ministers and their congregations in city affairs, political affairs. I believe the separation of church and state has been tried, and it didn't work. Our streets are not safe. Our families are falling apart. We need to merge the two groups of people, the politicians and the ministers and their congregations and the people who vote, and try to work out some of our problems jointly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, I am Jody Dozman. I live in Kalamazoo. I'm staying at the Gospel Mission. I've gotten a few things cleaned up. I've enjoyed my time doing it. In the name of Jesus, I love it. My heartaches are bigger when I sit there and watch things go on at the hospital. and I watch my family taken away from me, and I see things going on like the Glow House, which I found out today, Heritage Hall. Okay, then you have the, what is it, Crook across the street. You had the tunnels beneath. The mafia digs tunnels in prison. You showed it on TV. The way they bring the children in and out of there, the crying, the terror, the dislodgements, the body parts. It is exasperating. It is pure hell between those two places. And from what I've seen down there, the way intentional things are laid out, I'm appalled by the way things are going. To have my daughter with her aunt and not join me in my family quest, which I love. You see the mess down there with all the trash cans. I've even told you when I first started coming in here, 100,000 people died in one breakout of the bubonic plague from fecal matter, urinations, bugs, cockroach, fecals. You got your ticks. And you know what? Then I go up to the halls. What is it, the hall segregation up there, the hall? Okay, so then my son's at this hall ownership there at Western to top you guys knowing that down there, why you left it, but I'm glad I got to bring it to your attention. So, how you leave my son in a mold pit and take his life down, my daughter with your Vanderbrook and your lies, my family tormented with breakdowns, and where's my son's $2 million bond? The bond belongs to the spouse and the following children, not the favorite daughter. Okay, so that's gone somewhere. So I'm wondering what's going on with these plagues. The children crying, the children being held and used. What is going on with the tossed salad bar there? I mean, as far as diversity, right? Okay, then I'm wondering why you, of all people, with your clique, don't say something about stuff like all that. To have children harbored next to a theater in a brick thing for the damn football shuttle to come along and choose is a hell of a thing to do. So I could imagine the Vanderbrook and the Glow House, the Heritage Hall now, and people you utilize against helping us save the Trade Center.
Ma'am, your time has expired. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Pamela Rowland. I reside here in the city of Kalamazoo for most of my life. Kalamazoo has been my home. It has been 50 years since Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was slain, and still we remember and celebrate the principles by which he lived his life. In 1987, the City Commission adopted a resolution where they renamed the Kingston Park to honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. During the same time, the Junior Girls was recognized as a nonprofit organization in 1986, the year before, where we empower young ladies ages 8 to 18, along with their families, to excel in all areas of their lives. We do this by exposing young ladies and their families to educational opportunity, social excellence. We do after-school programming. We do a literacy program, Still I Rise. There's a multitude of programs that we offer here in the community of Kalamazoo. We are very honored. At that time, going back to 1986, when the resolution was adopted, our nonprofit organization was very, let me say that community engagement was a top priority to us. And we wanted the girls to know what it was like to give back to the community. It was an honorable opportunity. It's been 31 years now that we have gone into that park faithfully. We've had challenges, ups and downs, and things like that. And we, like Kalamazoo in Bloom, we have partnered with other youth-serving organizations where they adopt a bed. We have about like 6 beds in that park. Some of the organizations, and it's a diverse group of organizations, Serving Youth, NAACP, AXO. We have JABS, Justice Against Bullying on the playground in schools. We have Landscape Love, who they go in and they bi-monthly pick up litter. We have Galilee Baptist Youth Group that's there in the park. We have a sorority from Western Michigan University. I do apologize, I don't remember their name at this time. And of course, we have the Kalamazoo Junior Girls Organization, where I have been serving as the founder and executive director for 32 years. On this past Saturday, we had an opportunity to do our annual planning. We try to do that the first Saturday of June of each year. This year, I feel very honored for whatever the reason it could be, the 50 years that we're recognizing Dr. King and the love and the principles for which he stood by. And so I am here actually to offer an open invitation for you as commissioners to take a stroll, ride by, drive by. Patrick is here from the city of Kalamazoo. We are working together to make that park even better. But my visit here today, I feel compelled. Normally it's not an
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wanting to address the commission this evening? Seeing no one, we are now at commissioners' comments. Commissioner Sykes.
Yeah, I'll try to make this as brief as possible, noting my wordiness. I want to be very clear on the conversation earlier around this upcoming development and the conversation that occurred after that. My yes vote for this is based on the commitment made by you folks to partner with the city and the community on some of these issues and help us out. And so I really appreciate that. And so I look forward to seeing more of that. Or not more of that, but the outcomes of that, let me say that. So thank you for that. I also, appreciate conversations around separation of church and state. It reminded me, though, of something that I think I've been meaning to say for a while. It's just that I know that we make invitations to community religious leaders to come kick off our meetings, and I personally really appreciate that because it always centers me and puts me in the right mind frame to do this work. I don't know whether or not this is true because I don't know, how many people get the invitation and don't respond or don't come. But, I hope that we have a really religiously diverse list and that we're working all the time to increase the diversity of that list so that we're making sure that all belief systems in our community are represented. And so that's just sort of like a side note that's been in the back of my mind and just wanted to say out loud. You know, Commissioner Cooney, I often so appreciate your comments because they help for me, they often help put words to some of the things that I'm struggling with. And so thank you so much for your comments, particularly around young people and these, you know, who have access to these great programs we're creating, and how, what does that mean if they don't have a home to go to, right? And I know that's something we all wrestle with. I know City Manager Ritzma, I know it's at the front of your mind and thinking about how we address some of these things. And it's, you know, I've been thinking about this for a while just in terms of community overall and people overall and humanity overall. And particularly because, you know, I think often about, you know, the balance of the role of public safety to keep people safe and also, you know, marginalized communities that have been savagely exploited. And so we see the results of that sometimes in children's behavior, in violence and group violence, and in a lot of other ways. And how do we balance those things, right? And I know that's a constant concern for us. I think that the theme for tonight for me is that we have a lot of great things to offer in Kalamazoo. We've got a lot of new great opportunities. But we have to, every step of the way, intentionally and actively make sure that we are making space for everyone. I don't say that to suggest we don't all believe that, but I say that to say I think we can always, always, always push ourselves to think about folks living in extreme poverty and in homelessness, and what is our active, intentional plan to make sure that we're making space for those folks. Folks who have mental health needs, right? And who just need a community to embrace them, right? What are we doing? What are we thinking through? You know, I know we've got a lot of great services, Kalamazoo community mental health and whatnot, but I still think for all of us, we have to have a well-rounded, holistic view of all of these issues and these things, and take them into consideration every time we're talking about any work that we do. And then also, what are we doing when we're, you know, considering people that, you know, often society says are failing, right? People who are failing. Particularly, you know, Commissioner Anderson, you and I had a conversation about, you know, displacement and cultural displacement versus you know, reducing crime rates, right? And addressing the issue with drugs in our communities, right? And I know we've got an opioid crisis happening, right? But needing to understand that acts of survival are not cultural. What they do is they reflect the disparities, right, of people in our community, disparities based on identities, disparities based on family history, disparities based on the history of this overall country. And so I'm being long-winded about this to say, I don't think anybody in any community, us included, should be thinking about any step forward without that vision of how do we embrace with love all of our community, including people who are struggling with issues that we sometimes feel are just too heavy to lift, and we don't have the resources, and we don't have the know-how, and you'll never actually solve that problem, right? And so again, I lift that up not to say I think it's a new thought, but just to sort of put that out there. And it is as much a reminder for me tonight as it is for everybody else. And then finally, Kalamazoo Junior Girls, I'm so glad we got to hear from you tonight. I do personally know, because I'm on the email chain, how much incredible work goes into MLK Park. And as somebody who loves to also still be an activist, the number of times I have been in MLK Park, it's never lost on me how gorgeous it is and how well kept up it is. And I so appreciate the community and members of our community leading on that, right, and taking a handle of that. And I think it's a great demonstration of what we can make happen for our youth and for our communities when it is led by those of us in our communities, right? And so I would say anytime, we're thinking of new programs and things we need to address and we're looking for who can help us address X, Y, and Z, right? Let's always remember that the real way to do that, the most positive way to do that, and the most effective way to do that is to recognize that the leadership already exists in our communities, right? And all we have to do is go and hang out and talk and sit down and ask. Right, so thank you for your leadership. Thank you for everything that Junior Girls members do. Please pass on my thanks to them and my appreciation for everything they've brought and everything I know they will bring. And we will continue to follow your lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Cooney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 quick things. One is, first of all, congratulations to all our young people who will be graduating high school this week and to their families. Second, congratulations to the LGBTQ community for Pride Month. I think Jay put it very, very well, that authenticity is the issue. People have the right to be themselves, and we've come a long way in that, but we got a long way to go. Third thing I wanted to mention, my final thing, is that 50 years ago tonight, Robert Kennedy was killed. And he had just won the California primary. He was running for president. And he was running on, there were a number of things that he was fighting for. He was fighting to end the war. He was fighting for justice for people of color. He was fighting to end poverty. And he was fighting to bring people together. And these are the same struggles 50 years later that we continue to fight for. It was quite a blow the night he died because it was only 2 months since we had lost Dr. King. But Robert Kennedy was an optimist, and he believed that another world was possible and that we need to keep on striving to achieve that world. So in his honor, I think we need to take inspiration from him and continue that struggle.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Urban.
Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. First of all, regarding the Mr. Scudder's comment about wishing that church and state were not separate, I too would wish for that if the church and the state would cooperate without judging one another. That is the problem. They tend to judge one another, and that one side or the other, that makes people feel that their freedom is being impinged. So in the founding of our country, especially due to the history of the great wars that were occurring in Europe over religion in the 1600s, there was a strong desire to be free from state control of religion. And that was built into our Constitution. Over the years, that strong separation has weakened somewhat. I think in general that has been it's been a mixed blessing, I'd say. But I agree with your hope. But I just want to say that if we were to have less separation of church and state, we'd also have to have less judgment. That's my comment on that. I think it's very helpful of Commissioner Sykes to raise the tough issues in a way that invites us to consider them thoughtfully instead of considering them defensively. We've had people on the commission in the past who kind of have tended to raise the hackles of people who feel that too quickly that they need to be on the defensive. And I'm very grateful that you don't do that. But on the other hand, you're challenging us all. We are so much further along as a country than we were, say, even 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, in terms of awareness. We're not that far along in terms of action. You know, what if it could happen in Kalamazoo especially, because we have the raw material here, to actually turn around and face our problems squarely about diversity and recognize that the diversity brings stimulation and brings opportunity for learning. That's why I like to go to other places, where I like to visit other cities, be in other situations, because there's an opportunity to learn. And so that's what I think we can hold out to everybody, white, black, Latina, Asian, whatever, is we can learn so much from each other. I see this as a positive development, what you're doing, and I applaud all the folks on the commission who are sharing in your tendency to bring up the big issues, even if they're not immediately solvable or saying, well, that's outside the jurisdiction of the city of Kalamazoo. Well, that could be a cop-out. You know, in a way it may be true, but why does that have to stop us? So I'm kind of energized by the whole thing that's going on this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, love is the cornerstone, and that is always the message that we want to present anytime we talk about anything in this community, because that's what we're all about. I just want to highlight a couple things. Father's Day is coming up. To all the fathers, congratulations for the many great things that you have done and continue to do, not only within your home, but within this community. The Fatherhood Network has quite a few events coming up. I won't name all of them, but I'll point out two or highlight two. One being the Growlers game on June 24th. All fathers and children get in free. You just have to RSVP with the Fatherhood Network. Please see Facebook event page for that information. Also, one thing that I appreciated about our presentation earlier, we also have on the day before Father's Day, Fathers Do Read event. Fatherhood Network is supporting Fathers Do Read as an organization, and they are collaborating with the public library to read to children. On the date will be June 16th, 2 p.m., 4 p.m. at this local Kalamazoo Public Library. And once again, AVB, take all of the conversation that we had today in love, as what you're doing is very important to our community. We do respect that, we do honor that, and that's why I think you see the unanimous vote. But once again, if there's ways that you can educate other individuals in the community and empower other individuals in the community to follow up behind you in your footsteps, please do, because empowering is a part of that age-old question that we've been dealing with in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was flat earlier when I was reading the Pride Proclamation, because I spent the greater part of my day either talking to political organizations or nonprofit organizations or constituents, or to dozens of media outlets across the state, explaining the Supreme Court's ruling that occurred this morning around 10:15 related to the Masterpiece cake baker. And while the court specifically didn't grant bakers or anyone else a license to discriminate against the LGBT community, the ruling is sure to help exploit businesses and individuals who seek to use religious beliefs to excuse discrimination. And so those of you that know me well, you might know that I'm not a big Pride Month person. I'm not a big Pride Festival person, and that's a conversation for out of these chambers. But I think I can drill it down. Jay and his team do outstanding work, and if you talk to members of our community, they'll talk about the amazing time that they've had in past Pride Festivals downtown Kalamazoo. But when the glitter is all swept up and the sparkleberry has been consumed and the party's over, there's still a lot of policy that needs to be addressed. Michigan is one of 30 states where we don't provide protections to the LGBT community. And in the proclamation that I read earlier, we talked about the work that this community did in 2009. And recently, the Kalamazoo Township also did a similar non-discrimination ordinance, as did the city of Portage. But there's many jurisdictions within our own county where if Amy and I go for dinner, we can be refused service. And in my business, we like to talk about we can get married, but on Monday we can get fired. And that doesn't that's not a situation that I personally will face. It certainly won't happen here in the city of Kalamazoo because of that non-discrimination ordinance. But Kalamazoo is one of 40-some municipalities that has created a patchwork of protections for residents of Michigan, and that's unacceptable. And so as I think about pride and all the good times and being ourselves, and if I think back to one of my first prides, it was one of the first times I kissed a girl, right? Because it was a safe space. But we need to take that energy post-pride and put it into policy. And 2018 is an election year, and I won't start getting on my election advocacy kick right now, but we have legislation sitting at the state legislature that's never going to see the light of day. Legislation introduced by our own representative, John Hoadley, that would amend the state civil rights law, Elliott Larson, to include sexual orientation and gender identity. And we happen to know, and for your reference, I'm the political director at Equality Michigan. We happen to know that this has bipartisan support. But members, leaders in both the Senate and the State House refuse to give this legislation a hearing or an up or down vote. So Michigan will continue residents across the state to face discrimination. And this discrimination impacts all members of the LGBT community, but disproportionately impacts trans community members as well as specifically trans women of color. Absolutely, hands down. And so while I'm thrilled that this community allowed me to read a proclamation today and that Jay and his team were here to receive it and they're going to have a wonderful celebration this weekend, we got to be thinking about the policy that has not occurred yet at the state level as well as the federal level. So my three final kind of comments are, one, we must redouble our efforts to pass the Federal Equality Act. We must make amendments to the state's Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, and we must defend the recent interpretive action taken by the Michigan Civil Rights Commission, which happened at our last business meeting, which is why I wasn't here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor, I'm going to put you on the spot, though, while you're, after hearing that. How can people help? What's the actions, 2 or 3, or whatever you want we want people to do?
Sure. I would call State Senator Margaret O'Brien. Again, this isn't a political comment. Margaret is our state senator. She's in a leadership position to put pressure on the Senate Majority Leader to take up the legislation that's been introduced into the Senate. If you're hearing me, you can work with John Hoadley and his office to look at other lawmakers that might need to have some reach outs, but also in the Kalamazoo County area is State Rep Brant Iden. Again, a phone call to Brant Iden demanding that the Speaker of the House take this legislation up, give it a fair hearing and an up or down vote is something to do. You can volunteer with Jay and his team. Jay and myself at Equality Michigan, we're going to be doing civic engagement work in 2018. We are going to work to elect pro-equality representatives up and down the ballot so that we can ensure pro-equality policy comes out during lame duck as well as in 2019.
Thank you. It's interesting that you raise this, and some people's hackles will go up, and that's okay. We do that sometimes, but if you think about the 60s and what occurred with all that work, all the amendments to Voting Rights Acts, or having a Voting Rights Act, and Civil Rights Act, and all of these things that occurred because of actions that individuals took, of calling their senators, demonstrating, pushing and prodding. You have that right in this country, which is amazing. Not every place has that. And it can work. It can work. You know, the idiocracy of finding ways to marginalize people is it's stupid. I mean, we talk about it in this city and every mayor I talk to, and we talked about it today, the need for talent, the need for people to live in our communities, the need for people to invest and spend their dollars. Why do you care where that dollar came from overall if someone, their sexual orientation shouldn't matter, that they come into your restaurant, they buy your coffee, and half the time you don't know who they are. You don't know. So it's just really ridiculous. We need this. We need all of everybody. We need all of everything there is good and everything that can impact, and every family member. We need, we need all of them. I didn't interrupt you, Commissioner. So this marginalizing people, it just makes no sense. For me, that's the issue. I mean, I understand the love and the civil rights. It's ludicrous in regards to success and opportunity and excellence of cities and urban areas and rural areas. It is dumb of us. That's the thing I don't understand. It is just plain stupid that we would ever encourage discrimination or ever support it or ever think that someone shouldn't be respected for whom they are. And what's so interesting is nobody that, if you haven't got a child out there now, let's say you were childbearing age, or and some of us have some of y'all have little kids. You don't know if your child is going to be gay, straight. You may think that you did everything in your power, but you don't know because you don't control it and they don't control it. It's just the way it is. So I don't care where you stand in the conservative, liberal, whatever, it's stupid. Let's get our act together. It's just plain stupid. I hope we celebrate pride and have a good pride, but I do agree with the Vice Mayor, and I say this often, and Commissioner Sykes heard me say this. This is one of those things she gets tired of me saying. I love people that demonstrate, and I think it does matter, but it's about the work that you have to do beyond holding a sign. Truly is. You know, everybody that is of voting age and is registered can vote. Get 10 people that believe your way and get them to vote. That's what they hear. You can overpower the money that's in politics. You can overpower the stupidity that's in politics by getting people into the ballot and voting. There is no reason why we should have, what's our voting in the last city commission election, 12% or something like that?
Yes.
I'm ashamed that I even know that number. So anyway, I wasn't going to do that, but you brought it out of me. I want to end with this. It's a thank you to Chief Thomas and her team at Public Safety for a couple reasons. One, I appreciate the hard work and the energy and the effort, and I said this the other night, of her presentation to us a week ago. Moreover, our chief was out on Saturday night at 2 and 3 in the morning working on the ecstasy line and trying to deal with, there's a different term for it, I'm sorry, Chief, I screwed that up, but really trying to deal with the cruising that's going on in our neighborhoods. And she had a task force working on that night, and she was a part of that task force, understanding that she's serious when she says she is a part of this community. I think she was at the Doodah Parade and the Memorial Parade, and just tons of respect here. But one of the things I know that she provided at last minute for the Honorable Mayor Bradley was an honor guard at his funeral in Cassopolis. 4 of our officers standing watch over a mayor that served this community well, the first African-American mayor. So proud of them. We received so many thank yous. His wife felt, she felt that people had forgotten him here in Kalamazoo. She really did. And he talks about his time, or had talked about his time, often sitting in this seat where I'm sitting. So what we did was very, very special. So to all your men and women, Chief, thank them from me and from all the mayors before me. We are adjourned.